Rolling.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we will hear a presentation from Gary Michael Ross, an address that will have nothing to do with 11-dimensional string theory, quantum physics, dark energy, green black-eyed humanoids, tastelessly representing extraterrestrials, or computer applications in amateur astronomy for which the speaker cares nothing. Zoology and atmospheric physics takes him back to living the life of the mind, ultimately a lost cause, where aquatic biology was always dearer than ornithology. A declining IQ discourages any research into the latter these days. Who could it be but Gary Ross?
Yes. I feel my IQ declining even as I stand here. And these faces are no encouragement, I can tell you that. Well, it's a great honor to address what is the Greece to Grand Rapids, Rome, right? In Rome we have great works. Here we have intellectual energy. That's why I go from place to place. Yes, well, you make your contribution, Bert. I mean, it's not great, but you do make a contribution. Now,
Read my lips.
I dedicate this, which is not entirely off on a tangent to this evening's topic. I dedicate this to our former WASP editrix, Deborah, and comrade Licata. To wit, it was a quiet morning, the town covered over with darkness and ease in bed. Summer gathered in the weather, the wind had proper touch, the breathing of the world was long and warm and slow. You had only to rise, lean from your window, and know that this indeed was the first real time of freedom and living. This was the first morning of summer. In one of the James Bond stories, Ian Fleming opines that in America one can safely converse with grunts and monosyllables. I agree. That does not describe Ray Bradbury. Chapter 1, Dandelion Wine. However, on the morning of the 18th of June last year, it was not the first night of summer or the first morning of summer. But in all other ways, the spirit of that morning, the feeling of that morning, was spot on with Bradbury's description of some small Ohio town in the 1920s. Except this was in Royal Oak. Specifically in the 12-Mile Road and Main Street region, neighborhood. It was completely cloudy, dead still. And given a habitual insomnia, I rolled out of bed at 0730 UT, precisely. I looked at the chronometer. 0730 Universal Time. To those of you who simply lack my international acumen, which by the way is also GMT, is 0230 Eastern Standard. Repeat, 0230 Eastern Standard Time. At the latitude of Detroit, computed from, thank you, the book of all knowledge, this thing that makes me a superior being, Observer's Handbook of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. There are those who have this book, there are those who do not. Those who do not are not worth knowing. I calculated the beginning of astronomical twilight at Detroit at 7 minutes after I got out of bed. It is interesting, as a sidebar, how different, this is near the solstice, remember? This is the 25th of June, the solstice was a few days earlier. It is interesting how much difference there is in the beginning of astro twilight at the solstice at 40 degrees and at 45 degrees. Columbus versus Grayling, something like that. We're pretty much in the middle. It was dark. Now, scratch the Russian, find the peasant. At the farm, we lack indoor plumbing. So I'm in the habit of going out, as in out of the house, to do my business. Just because I'm in the big city doesn't mean I have to change. You can take the country out of the boy, but not the boy out of... No, it goes the other way around. Take the boy out of the country, but not the country out of the boy. So I went out and I conduct my business. It's dead silent. It is amazing. I find it amazing. This is Royal Oak. This is the center of the Detroit-Windsor conurbation. How quiet it can be in the small hours of the morning at the intersection of two rather considerable avenues. Very quiet. Went back in the house. I don't know what I did. Then I went back, for some reason, on the back stoop, and I heard the birds. Further note. The moon, this is a material point, the moon was still waxing. So at that hour, the gibbous moon was at or approximately below the horizon. The moon was not a factor in this. But I heard the birds. And it just wasn't one bird or two birds. It was in the neighborhood. The birds had started up essentially at the beginning of astronomical twilight. This took me aback because living in Lowell Township and being a habitué of the Veen Observatory at dawn patrol, I know something about avian behavior, but I am not an amateur ornithologist, and I don't really know anything about bird ecology. But here I am in this big city, and I hear the birds. And I can't identify the species. I can perhaps identify 5 or 6 bird genera, and that's it. So I don't know what kind of birds are doing this singing at this hour. It's night, for God's sake.
Is this an Alfred Hitchcock movie?
Oh, that. That was written by some, I know it's based upon a British novel, right? It's a good story. It's like On the Beach by Neville Shute, who I don't think ever cracked a physics book in his whole life. Right? Enough for you.
Feel-good story where the good guys win in the end.
Sorry that?
It's a feel-good story where the good guys win in the end.
On the Beach, the good guys didn't win in the end. I read it.
Sorry, the birds. I mean.
Oh, that, yeah. Okay. I remember the Clinton State of the Union address. Now, what the hell the President of the United States is doing discussing this in the State of the Union address, I don't know. But social promotion must end. Big applause, applause, applause. Of course, I figured it'd be an applause line. Well, I am a product of social promotion, and I am proud. Right. At least I was good looking. I should not have passed high school physics. So here it comes. Fasten your seatbelts. You see, I don't have to stand, I'm not a PowerPoint man, so I don't stand up here and read every stupid thing I put up there. You can read it yourself. "18 degrees below the horizon is the magic number for the beginning of astronomical twilight. That is, sun center at 18 degrees below at the geometrical horizon. That's when astro twilight started. At 0737 UT, although Bruce P. Seidel's Moonrise program on my computer gives it a little later. You saw that on the previous slide. Algorithms can disagree. We're only talking about a few minutes. The magic number is 18 degrees is below the horizon. So listening to the birds, I'm thinking, what could they possibly see with the sun 18 degrees below the geometric horizon? They're not seeing the sky lighting up. Maybe they're seeing polarized atmosphere. I don't know, to repeat, enough about avian ecology, much less avian ocular anatomy, to know what birds see. I know that bees are very, very sensitive to ultraviolet light. They can also see into the ultraviolet. I've read I shouldn't say any number of places, but I've read a couple of places that the human eye cannot detect polarization. Now, who am I to argue with the textbook writers? But I think that I can do it. The zone of maximum polarization in a clear sky is 90 degrees away from the sun. That I think that I can detect, especially if there's any sort of cloud in the sky, that vibrating zone in the sky 90 degrees from the sun. I may be fooling myself. Or even in the winter, when the sun is very low and the sky is clear, there is a certain quality to the light. A friend made a comment about some artworks he saw at the Chicago Art Institute that gave to, in watercolors, the sky had a certain look to it over the snowscapes. And I explained to him that the artist is capturing the polarized winter sky. I am wondering, and I'm throwing this open, can birds detect polarized light? Some of the species, some of the genera. Because why else would the birds in the whole neighborhood have kicked into song? Unless we're talking about one extended family and they're all talking to one another about where we're going to go for breakfast. Or who had a hot night with the chicks, and not the little chicks, the big ones, if you catch my drift. Right. So, one of my heroes of my early astronomical days, Matt F. Taggart, R.I.P., long time ago, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, ended one of his memorable lectures he gave, I heard in 1963, with his words, "All you have to do is get up in the morning." That has been one of my guiding principles. And no, I'm not a dairy farmer. But this is a case whereby if you get up before the first milking, maybe you can encounter some sort of an interesting natural phenomenon. What does Lord Rutherford have to do with this? Lord Rutherford opined that the only true science is physics. Everything else is butterfly collecting. To which I say, let's hear it for the butterflies. After all, what would some New Zealand farmer know about the beauties of nature? Or those things that are left to be discovered? I myself like to tuck into the draggings from a plankton net. So I guess that makes me, in Rutherford's eyes, a butterfly collector. So be it. I'm a product of social promotion, so what can you expect? I leave it to any further discussion. I am sorry I will not be going to the gin mill, but I'd like to hear what any of you have to say about avian physiology, anatomy, or ecology?
Comment? I think they were discussing this guy who got up at 2:30 in the morning.
I never quite considered that. Because they're city birds, so they're not used to seeing this, and they, going out back, right? Yes, Diane?
All right, so many species of migratory birds do have the ability to perceive the Earth's magnetic field, and it is believed that polarized light does affect their ability to do so. But as of this decade, the main experiments have been carried out in captivity with zebra finches, so there's some, it looks like you might be correct, but we don't have a big body of evidence.
All right.
There are very compelling research studies that show that at least zebra finches, basically their magnetic compass, because migratory birds need to know where they're going.
Yes.
But adding in artificially polarized light radically recalibrates their magnetosensitive receptors in the retinas. So
There you go.
So Gary discovers.
And
Or at
Gary's
least got
also
it.
that humans
Social
can-
promotion isn't all bad,
The
right?
humanoid can perceive the effects of natural polarization.
What are some other things that they might be sensing? Change in temperature?
Well, I don't know. It's cloudy. It's dead still. How much change in temperature could there be in the very few minutes that this observation manifested itself? I think we can kind of zero out a lot of the other exogenous variables. But one thing we cannot forget is that the twilight is in fact coming on, ever so gently and ever so faintly.
2:30 in the morning. I think they could smell your business.
They probably could.
Twilight is coming.
I would like to give a demonstration.
2:30 in the morning, twilight is coming that early.
Yes,
Around the
solstice.
around the summer solstice.
The
Astronomical
solstice.
twilight.
That's right. This is only a few days after the summer solstice. Yet,
My recollection is that at least predatory birds have about twice as many rods in their eyes as humans do, which
Right.
makes them
yeah,
extremely sensitive to very faint light. I mean, think
Right.
about it. You see a hawk 150 feet up, and he can see a mouse scrambling around in the grass.
all right, but
And he can dive
that
down and get it.
that does not address faint light perception. All right, a
Yeah,
small
but he has
not-
twice as many things to perceive light.
Then you're
Like the owls.
implying that the birds were actually seeing the twilight, and it wasn't the polarization that was they found interesting. All right.
That the rods are for
Yeah.
night vision.
Huh?
The rods are for night
Rods
vision.
are for nighttime, because
About
he's
owls.
talking about
I
almost black.
would consider it, but I've got to get a cloudy night, dead still, warm. It was a rather warm morning, and I just keep my eyes and ears open. I'm not likely to be at the observatory at Lowell Township on a cloudy night, but I could.
I think we need a bigger sample size.
Than one night. All right. Well,
Oh, you don't use Google search, didn't you say?
no,
that
I don't
before?
use a one-shot
There could
case.
be an answer for it.
Oh.
Someone's already.
Well, I leave it to lesser beings to do a Google search. Right? But,
Maybe a predator had just come, like if an owl flew by that, catches small
or
birds.
maybe they saw a cat wandering around somebody's nest and were setting up an alarm. All kinds of variables here I am not able to specify, much less control. But a one-shot case study is nonetheless valid, although limited in its application.
Okay,
There it is.
everyone's next theory, you're gonna have to propose it at the break.
Yeah,
We're running
yeah.
out of time on this.
There.
I believe our volunteer was our presenter.
Yeah,
So
that's
thank
right.
you.
You